This is an interesting time for me, too, because I think this is my 7th or 8th MWise, Cyber Defense Summit, MIRCON, if you remember that far back. But this is my first time as a non-mandated employee. So I'm representing Trellix, which for those that don't know, and you probably do because we've spent a lot of money on LinkedIn, we are the combination of what was the FireEye products business that got spun out of Mandiant about a year ago, actually, this month, with the McAfee Enterprise business. So what I'd like to do today is take you through that journey that we've been on over the last year, and really kind of talk about it in a couple different ways. First, I'm going to set the stage and talk about the threat landscape, but from a customer challenge perspective, and kind of level set on what we're seeing and hearing from our customers as they continue to evolve their security operations. That then transforms into this hot buzzword of 2021 and 2022, XDR. And so I'll spend a little time talking about what XDR is, how we define it, how we think about it, and then we'll shift into some more specifics with Trellix. I'm really excited about where we are as an organization, so we'll dig into some details on really the experience from a SecOps perspective on what we're building and what we're coming out with. And then what I thought I'd do is wrap it up by talking about our continued partnership with Mandiant. And this is of utmost importance both to us as well as to Mandiant, and I'll share a couple different ways that we continue to work together to solve customer outcomes. So what's been interesting with the world over, is this working? There we go. Obviously, the last few years, the world has dramatically changed, and it's changed in a way that has radically accelerated the cyber landscape for us. You know, with the pandemic and what's happening around the world with Ukraine and now potentially China, the world has drastically changed, and it changed in a way that's dramatically affected how we run our security organizations, how we run our security operations. Your problems persist, and persist is probably not even the right word. Your problems have gotten more complex. And so today's reality is complexity. You are dealing with tons of data, user sprawl, tool sprawl, and you're trying to pull those all together into a single place to understand what the hell's going on, what do I have in terms of inventory and assets that I need to protect out there, and how do I effectively and properly do incident response when it does happen. And so complexity is a huge, just general challenge we're seeing, and we need to think about how we solve for that. And so if we think about the industry today, there's a couple key themes that we're seeing from customers and from partners as we talk to them on a daily basis. We've done a bunch of formal surveys with our customers as well, too. And these are some common themes and trends that are surfacing up for our customers as we talk to them. And I'd like to dig into a few details on each one of these. So first and foremost, the expanding attack surface. We saw this happening over the last decade as we started to shift towards the cloud, but we saw it accelerated even more so over the last 2 years when cloud shifts continued to happen with the pandemic, and obviously working from home greatly accelerated that. So a few years ago, a decade ago, when you were a CISO, you were protecting the perimeter of your office building, or you were protecting the perimeter of your data center. Those perimeters are gone. They no longer exist anymore. You have data in multiple clouds. You have data and applications and capabilities at multiple SaaS providers. You have your users and your employee base spread out throughout the entire world, coming in through home networks, working in coffee shops. 70% of employees are working from home. A lot of the surveys that we've seen, that trend will continue, even though we're kind of transitioning out of the pandemic now. So this concept of being able to understand what you have out there to protect, and when you think about things like bring your own devices, and it makes it a real challenge for security organizations to even know what they have to protect that's out there. The second thing we're seeing is this idea of threats shifting down market. And what I mean by this is the threats that were attacking the large enterprises of 5-10 years ago are starting to make that transition down to the mid-market and to SMBs. Ransomware is probably one of the biggest drivers for that, and it's simply because the risk-reward model of deploying ransomware is really easy for a lot of these threat actors. So whether you are a hospital or a small town municipality or a school system or a legal firm, a lot of these organizations that a few years ago did more of a checkbox security type of mindset or a compliance-only type of security approach, It's no longer applicable to them. And they need the same type of tools and capabilities as these larger enterprises that have the budgets and the people and the expertise to operate them, but they may not have those resources. And so that's a continued challenge that we're seeing. Related to all that, we're also seeing this idea of disjointed security tools. This number, 76 tools on average, now this is for larger enterprises, but even when you look at mid-market organizations, you're talking about anywhere between 20 to 50 tools in their security portfolio. That's crazy. And so if you think about not having enough people and enough expertise, not only to operationalize these tools, but to effectively utilize them in your SOC operations and your incident response processes, it's a huge, huge challenge, especially when you start to think about these smaller organizations that don't have the people, the expertise, the skills, the budget to run them. And then finally, this kind of all comes together. Overwhelmed security teams. We're not only seeing it with the tools and the threats getting more advanced and the tool sprawl happening, but you've all heard it and you've all seen it and you've all felt it. Being able to attract and retain and hire cybersecurity professionals is a huge challenge. That cybersecurity professional gap continues to grow, and we need to, as an organization and an industry, we need to get better at hiring people earlier on in their careers. But 76% struggle to recruit and hire, and this is a common theme we're seeing throughout. If you think about the smaller enterprises as well as those mid-market customers, they have trouble hiring folks and finding talent and recruiting that talent. And then once you recruit that talent, retaining that talent, because in 18 months, odds are a lot of those people are going to leave for another job. And so you build out that skill set, and then they move on. And so all this is kind of coming together in these challenges, which is how do you effectively run security operations for your organization? Another way to think about it, too, is this idea of the SecOps revolution. And in the past, the way that organizations would typically organize themselves would be around the endpoint, around the network, around email, or around cloud, or around data, or whatever it might be, but very siloed individual experiences, tools, teams that were looking at threats and alerts from these systems. Well, what's happened over recent years, and really the SIEM, SOAR market, and next-gen SIEM sort of kind of helped spearhead a little of this, but this idea of looking at data more collectively across the landscape and bringing it together. This is where XDR starts to really come into play as driving that effective SOC operations. And so the big question that everyone has is, well, what is XDR? And it's this huge buzzword. I got to say, the industry analysts, they're still trying to figure out exactly how it's being defined and what it means. And you've heard concepts of open XDR and native XDR and hybrid XDR, and do you have to have an endpoint? Well, the way I like to think about it is it's going beyond the endpoint. So yes, I think you do need endpoint, but it's going beyond the endpoint and bringing that together with network, with email, with cloud data, with identity data, with data coming from DLP systems, and telling a more complete end-to-end story of the threat so you can effectively understand what you have out there and collectively action that. The D part comes from the detection part, so that's where you get your detection, your correlation, your contextualization, and bringing it together to help you prioritize your alerts. And then the response piece is of utmost importance. How do you effectively, collectively respond to those threats in a unified, consistent sort of way? And how do you do that in an automated and orchestrated way? Another way I like to think about it, too, is it's sort of the convergence, or some people say it's the collision of a couple different markets. If you look at it from the left side, XDR is kind of coming to life from the SIEM market. So SIEM, obviously, large, mature market, huge TAM, really coming from that compliance IT security use cases. But it's evolved over the years, right? It's evolved from that heavy on-prem device, focusing on log collection, to then you started to see it shift to the cloud, and then you started to see all these SIEM vendors start to buy all these SOAR vendors and bring together some orchestration and automation capabilities. On top of that, you started to see it evolve into the security analytics landscape. So you started applying analytics on top of those large data sets that you were collecting, and things like UEBA, behavioral analytics, started to come to life. If you look at it from the endpoint side, you can also see a path towards XDR from that perspective as well, too. So, of course, we started with the EPP, the endpoint protection landscape. That evolved with Mandiant's leadership into the EDR, the detection and response landscape. So moving from protection detection only to having the forensics and capabilities to go respond to threats on the endpoint. And then we're seeing that now further evolve into XDR when you start combining the network, the data side, the cloud side, the identity side into a collective ecosystem. Another way to think about it is how the market's thinking about it with analysts. So this is Gartner's representation of their XDR architecture. They think about it as the front end and the back end. And the way I like to think about this is their front end is effectively, those are the threat vectors that you need to have visibility over and you need to have protection capabilities around and be able to respond back out to. And then the back end is really more of the core capabilities of the platform, how it's delivered, how it's deployed, what are the key capabilities around the workflows and the automations, et cetera. Now, what we did at FireEye Products and McAfee Enterprise is we saw an opportunity. We saw an opportunity with our portfolios in the industry and the amount of customers we had across the industry and capabilities we had across the portfolio that aligned really nicely with that previous slide that I just showed on Gartner. And so as of about a year ago, FireEye was sold off of the Mandiant team, so that was October 2021, and we combined with McAfee Enterprise. And over the last year, we've been on a journey to bring those portfolios together, and in January of this year, we rebranded ourselves as Trellix. And so we've been on a journey getting that brand out there and really rethinking the portfolio capabilities that we have, how can we apply those to the problems I just described previously. So what I'd like to do now is pivot to more of a Trellix story to help you understand what we've been up to and talk about how we fit into that XDR journey. And so as we've been building out Trellix, we've been thinking about kind of core key capabilities and what we call our design principles. And it's really centered around those three circles that you see up there. First and foremost, how do we effectively deliver simple, automated, scaled, and agnostic security operations for our customers? We think it's founded strongly in a really great endpoint, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And we think it's also coupled heavily with data protection. And when I say data protection, I really mean things like encryption and DLP. But we think those three pieces are key to solving effective security operation outcomes for our customers, but also coupled with the capabilities that I have described below around network email, vulnerability management, cloud identity, et cetera, and having this idea of a native capability balanced with an open ecosystem. And so as you look at XDR vendors, I think that's really important, is to look at vendors that have some core native capabilities. And again, I will stress, I think you need an endpoint, but also balanced with that open ecosystem. So the ability and understanding that all of our customers have diverse environments and will have different tool sets, and you need to be able to adapt and work with them. So this is the Trellix platform as it exists today. Obviously, with the focus on cloud, data shifting to the cloud, your assets shifting to the cloud, having full visibility on what's up there, understanding what your environment looks like across multiple cloud providers, and being able to effectively apply policies and governance around those assets is really important. Email is still incredibly important when you look at the full end-to-end threat. It's still the #1 entry point for all attacks, especially with phishing, business email compromise, things like that. And then data, like I mentioned as well too. Data sits in all of these pieces. So how do you best protect data from spreading across your organization? So data sprawl. How do you effectively maintain and manage data, making sure it doesn't incorrectly leave your organization? And then I'm not going to go too deep on this too, but we just did an announcement around our Advanced Research Center. Similar to what Mandiant provided us previously, this is our ability to accelerate our arm of the products organization through product research. This is where we do a lot of our AI ML training, our model training, a lot of our data science, tying back from what we're seeing in the real world, taking intelligence from our telemetry, applying it back to our products. And so we have a lot of focus on building this arm of the organization as well. Again, I'm not going to go too deep into this one, but I just wanted to call that out. What I would like to do, though, is really focus on that middle piece. And that's where we get into the console itself. So what I'd like to do over the next few slides is just walk you through what we've been working on from an X-Console experience. X-Console is what we are calling our single UI for the Trellix XDR solution. And if you think about it, this is the common challenge where you have multiple products. They each have their own console, might have related workflows, might have disparate workflows. What we've been working on very closely with our UX and our UI teams is bringing those together into the X-Console, so a single experience wrapped around a single web API. And then where the XDR piece fits in is in the middle, right? And so that's where we apply our contextualization, our prioritization across alerts, our correlation across those, and then all of our guided and incident response playbooks to an investigation. So I'm gonna pivot now and actually show you the console itself, and we'll take a few slides to walk through that. And so this has been, frankly, like years of work kind of fully coming together into that simplified experience. And if you remember, one of our design principles that I showed earlier was this idea of simple. And when I say simple, I don't mean simple equals dumb. I mean simple means easy to use and is guided for users. So the intent is taking those L1 analysts and up-leveling them to L2, L3 analysts where applicable. And so I'll just kind of highlight a couple things on this as we walk through this. So obviously this is a fairly critical risk where we saw an attempted data exfil attributed to APT28. Specifically for this one, we saw an attacker gained access to one device via a phishing email, and that led to a sensitive file exfil attempt that was stopped by Trellix DLP. You can see on the right side, this touches different parts of the MITRE framework. But more specifically, if you look at that box in the bottom, what we're trying to do is use clear, natural language to just make it super easy for you to understand what the hell happened and what should I do about it. So how did the attacker get in? We saw 4 users receive a phishing email with the subject urgent invoice overdue. Which assets are affected by this? And more importantly, what should I do about it? And if you see here, blocking the sender, blocking the domain, blocking the IP. And what you can do is as you go through each one of these, you can kind of see that performed. This is tying to our SOAR workflow system. So integrations with each one of these will allow you to actually automatically complete these, but still have that human intervention where you can review them before you complete them. And so as we go through this, we've completed it, we've contained the incident, and then we've closed it out. And so the idea here is we're gonna really emphasize the amount of time saved to show you what that total response time was across the different pieces of the attack. And we're gonna show you how much time we believe you've saved based on a lot of those automations. Once you close the incident, though, that's not where you end. We think it's also important to look at, what are some preventative measures that I can take in the future to minimize the impact of something like this attack happening again. And so giving you recommendations for critical actions to review your security posture so that you are better prepared against attacks against APT28 in the future. And so what we're really excited about is the work that we're doing with that Advanced Research Center, our ARC team, is really building out a lot of the underlying context here based on the different types of attacks that we see, again, to automatically surface and recommend actions, recommend preventative measures, and really start to automatically pull together those things so that the analysts themselves don't have to do this swivel chair, copy-paste experience across multiple tool sets and multiple experiences. So I'm incredibly excited about this. I hope you can feel my passion in this. This has been something that I've been working on for literally the last decade, trying to pull this together. And you guys are laughing because I have been. And it's really, really cool to see it kind of really coming to life now. So we're incredibly excited to get this out into the market and go big in this in next year. I would like to flip it now and talk a little bit about just the Trellix and Mandiant relationship, because that is really key to our success. We obviously separated a year ago as of October 21, but we have formal partnership agreements in place both ways to help both companies continue to be successful with our capabilities. I'll talk about a couple key areas where we partner, and just for your awareness. First and foremost is with the Mandiant Managed Defense team. We continue to partner with them as our sort of premier managed partner, and they support both the Trellix endpoint, Trellix network, and help look at cloud logs primarily across our major GCP, global cloud providers, Azure, GCP, and AWS. I'm not going to read all the details behind each one of these, but you can see a lot of the capabilities that our managed defense partnership allows us to be able to deliver to our mutual customers. And we see tons of continued success here, and we don't expect that to end. We also do a big partnership with, went too far, with our consulting services, and a couple key areas where we partner and they leverage Trellix technologies to drive those capabilities around incident response, first and foremost, heavy usage of Trellix endpoint, PX, NX, et cetera, and then compromise assessments, cloud security assessments. They continue to partner with us on that. I think what's probably the most interesting in terms of the partnership is around how we share and leverage each other's data. And so this is a little heavy eye chart flow, but I think the key here is from the Mandiant perspective, we take in their data to help us with detection and contextualization of alerts. And that elevates our ability to detect interesting top-level threats. It gives us the ability to add a lot of really amazing context to our alerts to understand tools, tactics, procedures, threat groups, malware families, characterizations, et cetera. The detections and the telemetry that we see from the FireEye product, or the Trellix product, sorry, that are out in the ecosystem, we have millions and millions of sensors out there. We feed that telemetry back into Mandiant, and they use that to further their research. So they get to, in a safe and anonymized way, they get to see a lot of the data that we see across our large customer base, 40,000 customers deployed out in the world, and they get to use that to enhance their research around threat intelligence and further building up the threat intelligence metadata around those. And so it's this continued cyclic cycle where we kind of feed off of each other to make each other better and stronger based on what we see. So there are three really core takeaways I'd like you to leave today with. First and foremost, security operations teams continue to struggle. I don't think the industry has solved the security operations challenges out there yet. I think we're still in the early innings of making that fully effective. Teams are getting better, but so are the threat actors. And so those advanced threats, that tool sprawl I talked about, and really addressing those talent shortages is a continued huge problem. I do believe XDR is really the next evolution to address some of these challenges. I think it's expanding upon the promises that SIEM and next-gen SIEM and the EDR markets sort of put out there a few years ago. And I truly believe those markets are going to start to come together. So I think you're going to start to see XDR dollars taking away dollars from the SIEM market, and potentially even EDR to an extent. And then third, I'll just say Trellix and Mandiant's partnership continues to remain strong through strong partnership agreements that we have. And we're looking to think about how with the next evolution of Mandiant and Google, how we continue to elevate those partnerships going forward. So I am here for questions. I don't know how much time we have. I think we actually have a good amount of time. So happy to take any questions. I'm here also the rest of the week. If you want to grab me, come say hi. But thanks for listening. Yeah.
And so I've heard, and realized that there's, in some cases, depending on what's going on a machine in a box, that there's high CPU usage. And I'm just wondering, the unified agent, how is that going to, if it will, streamline, cut down CPU usage and monitor that so it's not an overall effect on the box itself?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up the constant challenge with endpoints, right? And so yes, that is absolutely one of our top focuses as we bring those agents together. I don't have specific details on what that profile is going to look like and what the usage is going to look like, but yes, it's one of our top focuses. So yeah.
And when do we think the unified agent will be out?
So I don't have exact dates. It is going to be early 2023, is what I'm hearing.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
How are you envisioning the upgrade path for current clients to the new agent console stuff?
I can't answer specifics on that. I know there will be an upgrade path. So that is a big focus of the team. What we should do is we should probably talk on the side and figure out exactly what your deployment looks like and how that path would look like. I know there is going to be an upgrade path. I know we're not asking customers to buy something new. And so we're thinking through what that model looks like now. But I don't have specifics. Yes.
So as an existing McAfee customer, thank you, we have an on-prem EPO. Is the X-Connect, sorry, is that the term?
X
Or
console. Yes.
Is X console going to be the new EPO?
Yeah,
Is
so
this
we're
all evolved?
so EPO, we're taking a lot of those EPO capabilities, and that's being folded in as sort of the configuration, operations management piece of that one console. Yeah. Yeah. So when I say one console, it's really kind of three core pieces. It's the insights capabilities from McAfee, it's the EPO capabilities, and then it's from the FireEye side, it's our Helix product, which was sort of the early evolution of the XDR stuff.
Is that EPO on-prem or combined in the cloud, SaaS?
I think the primary focus is SaaS. I think they are looking at an on-prem version of what that looks like. I don't have details on how that's going to work.
What about the Intel from Ambition? Is there plans to roll that out as well?
Yeah. So that's going to be a big piece of it. So when I talked about the contextualization of alerts, a lot of that threat intelligence is coming in along with the Mandiant stuff that we have as well. It's also when I showed some of the preventative measure stuff that's coming in being fed in from the Insights platform. All right. No other questions? Well, thank you all. I appreciate your time.